They said the ocean only takes, but when I looked into his eyes, I knew the sea had given me everything. This is the story of how I found love, beyond the glass. The storm was a living thing that night. Waves heaved like dark mountains, their white crests torn apart by lightning. Thunder rolled over the coast, and in the distance, a lone gull cried before vanishing into the rain. But inland, behind layers of steel doors and humming generators, the sea had been captured. In a government lab buried beneath concrete, fluorescent lights flickered against glass walls, sterile and humming. The echo of dripping water mingled with the low growl of thunder outside. Marina moved silently down the corridor, mop and bucket in hand. She was used to being invisible here. The scientists never looked at her. The guards never asked her name. A night janitor was part of the furniture, like the creaking vents or the faint smell of bleach. She preferred it that way. Her only company was the hum of machines and the small silver seashell pendant she wore around her neck. The clasp was faulty, always loosening at the worst times. She often pressed her fingers to it, checking it was still fastened, as though the tiny charm might slip away forever if she didn't keep watch. She paused outside one of the reinforced rooms. This one always unnerved her. Security here was heavier. 2 sets of doors, cameras, alarms armed even at night. She had never been allowed inside before, until tonight. The guard at the desk waved her through without looking up from his crossword. "Tank room's on schedule, don't take long." Her heart pounded as the doors slid open. The air inside was colder, smelling faintly of salt and iron. The room was dominated by a massive cylindrical tank, its glass thick enough to stop a bullet. Water glowed dimly from within, shifting with faint currents. Marina bent down to scrub near the tank's base. As she leaned, the loose clasp of her pendant gave way. The chain slid from her neck and clattered across the floor, skittering until it struck the glass with a sharp, hollow sound. She froze. Something moved in the water. A shadow glided forward, slow and deliberate. For an instant she thought it was a trick of the light, a dark wave, a distortion. Then it emerged. A face. Not human, not entirely. Eyes the color of turquoise flame. Hair black as kelp, streaming around broad shoulders. A hand rose, pale against the water, pressing flat to the glass, directly above where her pendant lay. Marina's breath caught. The legends she'd grown up hearing, sirens, sea kings, men who walked in water instead of air, suddenly felt real, too real. The man in the water stared at her. Not with rage, not with hunger, but with something deeper, recognition. She stumbled backward, snatching up her pendant with shaking fingers. Her mop bucket rattled as she wheeled it toward the door, heart hammering in her ears. Behind her, in the tank's dim glow, he followed with his eyes, silent, unblinking, watching her until the doors hissed shut. And in that silence, Marina knew. She would come back. The rest of Marina's shift blurred past her, though she remembered little of it. Every corridor seemed louder, every shadow sharper. By the time she left the facility that night, the storm had passed, but the image of those eyes still burned in her mind. Turquoise, unblinking, fixed on her like she was more than just another face passing through. The next night, she lingered in front of the reinforced doors longer than usual. She told herself it was foolish, dangerous even. She told herself she'd only go in long enough to clean, then leave. But her steps carried her inside. The tank room was quiet. Machines hummed low, water shifting in gentle currents. At first, she thought it empty. Perhaps she had imagined him. Then he appeared. From the depths, his form glided upward with predatory grace. He moved like a shadow in his own kingdom, shoulders rippling, hair fanning around him in dark strands. He circled near the glass, watching her with sharp, unblinking eyes. Marina's hands trembled as she wrung the mop, but she forced herself to keep working. Her mother had always said, "Look at the ocean straight on. If you show fear, it takes you." So she met his stare. That was when she noticed the marks. Along his shoulders, Faint bruises bloomed like ink stains beneath the skin. Thin scars traced down one arm, crossing ridges of iridescent scales. When he turned, she saw metal scoring his wrist, raw abrasions from restraints. Her chest tightened. Whatever he wasn't simply contained. He was hurt. She glanced toward the door, half expecting a scientist to barge in, but the room was still, the cameras blinking lazily from their corners. No one was watching as closely as they should. He drifted closer, until only the glass separated them. His eyes roved over her face, her mop, her pendant still tucked under her collar. He didn't slam against the walls or bare his teeth like she'd expect from a wild thing. Instead, he studied her. Quietly, patiently. Marina swallowed, her voice caught in her throat. She didn't speak, not yet. She only kept cleaning, her motions steady, heart pounding like a drum. And all the while, he followed her with his gaze, tracing every step she made. The silence between them stretched long and taut, like the surface of still water. By the time Marina left the tank room, her hands were damp with sweat, her chest aching with breaths she didn't realize she'd been holding. She didn't dare look back as the doors closed, but she felt it. His eyes, watching her even as darkness swallowed him again. Marina told herself she wouldn't linger. She had work to do, floors to mop, trash to empty. But her steps slowed the moment she entered the tank room. The man in the water drifted near the glass, watching her with the same steady, unblinking gaze. His expression was unreadable, neither anger nor pleading, simply waiting. Marina tried to ignore him. She wrung out her mop, let it slap against the tile in steady strokes. The sound echoed in the chamber, rhythmic and hollow. Her nerves tingled, as though even the machines were listening. Without thinking, she began to hum, just a small tune under her breath, the sort of melody she used to calm herself when the world grew too heavy. Her mother had taught her that once, sitting by the shore. If the sea sings to you, sing back. She caught herself mid-note, lips snapping shut. What was she doing, humming in front of whatever he was? But then the water shifted. A low vibration filled the tank, deep, resonant, almost like a whale's call. Her eyes flew up. The man had tilted his head back, throat shimmering faintly as he released the sound. Her heart raced. Slowly, she hummed again, just a single note. He answered. The sound that followed wasn't just mimicry. It was a harmony. His low tone weaving beneath hers, filling the room with strange, haunting music. The mop slipped from her hands, clattering to the floor. Marina pressed her palm to her mouth, half in awe, half in fear. Yet the tune continued. Every note she gave, he matched, bending it, shaping it, turning her simple lullaby into something that rippled through her bones. For the first time, his eyes softened. Not the cold turquoise flame she had first seen, but a quiet light, curiosity, recognition. Marina's breath trembled. The room felt smaller, closer, as if the glass between them were thinner than before. She broke off suddenly, nerves jangling, and snatched her mop back up. The silence crashed down hard. But as she backed toward the door, she heard it. One last hum, low and lingering, echoing from the water. A promise that the song was not finished. Marina had always carried scraps of paper in her pocket, the backs of checklists, discarded notes from the staff lounge, anything to keep her hands busy during the long hours. She doodled without thinking, little shapes, mostly waves and shells, things that reminded her of home, of standing barefoot on wet sand and listening to the tide. That night, she found herself once again inside the tank room. The man was waiting, as if he knew she would come. His turquoise eyes tracked her every step, steady as a tide. She cleaned in silence, forcing herself to ignore him, until her pen slipped from her pocket and rolled across the floor. She stooped to pick it up, and with it, the folded scrap of paper she'd been absent-mindedly sketching on during her break. A rough wave curling over itself. Her chest tightened. Ridiculous. she thought. He wouldn't understand. He wasn't human. But still, she pressed the page flat against the glass. At first, nothing. He hovered in the water, head tilted, gaze fixed on the crude drawing. Then his hand lifted, palms spreading against the same spot. The water glowed faintly where his skin touched it, light rippling outward in concentric circles. Marina gasped. The glow traveled, curling into a wave pattern across the inside of the tank. It wasn't exact, but it was clear enough. He had answered. Her breath caught in her throat. With shaking fingers, she drew again. A seashell this time. He studied it, then swept his hand through the water, releasing another trail of light, this one spiraling like the ridges of her sketch. Her lips parted. They weren't just sounds anymore. They weren't silence or stares through the glass. This was communication. She pressed her palm to the drawing, then to the glass itself. He mirrored her, hand meeting hers with only the thickness of reinforced crystal between them. The glow lingered beneath his touch, a soft, pulsing light. For a long moment, neither moved. It was only when the intercom crackled suddenly to life outside, a muffled voice, orders exchanged, that she jumped back, heart hammering. The spell was broken. She stuffed the paper into her pocket and fled before anyone could see. But as the doors closed behind her, she dared one last glance over her shoulder. And there he was, still at the glass, still glowing faintly in the dark. The hall outside the tank room always seemed too quiet. A single guard at his desk, cameras blinking red, the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Marina usually kept her head down, pushing her cart, invisible. But that night, voices drifted down the corridor, sharp, clinical, the kind that made her stop in her tracks. She ducked her head, pretending to adjust her cart, but listened. Two scientists walked side by side, clipboards in hand, their coats swishing as they passed. Their words carried, clipped, and precise. The transfer is scheduled at week's end. Containment protocols must be doubled. We can't risk damage before dissection. Dissection. Marina's breath caught. She pressed closer to her mop handle, willing herself to look uninterested, but the words kept coming, each one like a knife in her chest. The specimen's regenerative properties won't last once it's sedated. Tissue samples are priority. If the lungs function as suspected, the department wants them preserved. The men turned a corner, their voices fading. Marina's hands trembled. She stood frozen, staring at the floor tiles until they blurred. Specimen. Lungs. Dissection. Her mind flashed to the bruises she had seen along his wrists, the scars carved across his shoulder, the way he had pressed his hand to the glass, answering her sketch with a glowing ripple. He wasn't an animal. He wasn't a thing. He was alive. Her seashell pendant lay heavy against her chest. She clutched it, as if her mother's voice might spill through, calm and steady. The ocean calls who it claims. But this wasn't the ocean. This was a cage. She forced herself back into motion, mopping a patch of floor that didn't need cleaning. When she finally dared to return to the tank room, the water shimmered faintly. He was there, waiting, eyes sharp and unyielding. She stared back, her heart in her throat. For the first time, she felt not just curiosity, not just awe, but fear. Not of him, of what they were planning to do to him. The next night, Marina's steps echoed louder in the corridor, though she tried to tread soft. Every word she'd overheard still pulsed in her mind. Specimen, dissection, lungs. She should have stayed away, she told herself. Pretend she had never heard it. Pretend she had never seen him. But her feet carried her back to the tank. He was waiting. The glow of the water pulsed faintly, silver blue, like moonlight trapped in glass. He floated near the surface, his eyes steady, fixed on her as though he'd been watching the door for hours. Marina's throat tightened. She gripped her mop handle, wishing she could look anywhere but at him. Yet the weight of his stare pressed down, and finally she lifted her gaze. He moved then, slow, deliberate. One hand rose from the depths, water slipping from his fingers as he pressed his palm flat to the glass, directly over her. The room seemed to hold its breath. Marina's heart hammered. She should have turned away, should have busied herself with cleaning, but her body betrayed her. Her own hand lifted, trembling, until her palm rested against the cool glass opposite his. The barrier separated them, but still, her skin tingled. His eyes softened, that faint turquoise glow warming, as if something passed between them. Her breath fogged the glass. His did too on the other side. For one impossible instant, it felt as if the wall between them wasn't there at all. A sound escaped her. Half sigh, half laugh, nervous and aching. She pulled her hand back sharply, clutching her pendant like a shield. But his palm stayed, waiting, hoping. The intercom crackled outside. A guard's voice barked something about a schedule, the sharp snap of boots on tile following. Marina's pulse spiked. She scrambled to collect her things, dragging her mop bucket toward the door. As the doors hissed shut, she dared one last glance back. He hadn't moved. His hand remained pressed to the glass, turquoise eyes burning through the dim water, following her as long as he could. And Marina, clutching the seashell at her throat, realized she was no longer just afraid for him. She was afraid of herself, of how much she wanted to go back. The air in the facility felt different that night, tighter. Guards posted closer to the reinforced rooms, scientists moving briskly through the halls with folders clutched tight to their chests. Something was shifting, and Marina felt it in her bones. She kept her head down as always, pushing her cart, mop sloshing with every step. But as she rounded the corner near the tank room, a voice stopped her. "Hey!" She froze. A guard leaned against the wall, his cap pulled low, arms crossed over his chest. She recognized him vaguely, Ethan, one of the younger recruits. Usually quiet, polite in a way the others weren't. Tonight, though, his gaze was sharp. "You've been going in there a lot," he said, nodding toward the heavy door. Marina's pulse spiked. She forced a laugh. "Just doing my job." Ethan studied her, then lowered his voice. "You didn't hear this from me, but the transfer's happening tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to be anywhere near that room when it does." Her grip tightened on the mop handle. "Transfer?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "You don't want details, just be smart, stay clear. Some things are better left alone." With that, he pushed off the wall and walked away, boots echoing down the hall. Marina stood rooted, heart thundering. Tomorrow. The word clanged inside her skull like a bell. Tomorrow, they would cut him apart. The bruises, the scars, they hadn't been accidents. They were practice, preparations. Her pendant slipped against her collarbone, the faulty clasp tugging loose again. She caught it in her palm, clutching it tight. The ocean calls who it claims. That night, when she entered the tank room, her steps were unsteady, her breaths shallow. He was there, waiting, always waiting. The glow of the water outlined his form in silver blue. His eyes locked onto hers the moment she entered, and something in them sharpened, sensing the storm inside her. Marina walked to the glass, lifted her trembling hand, and pressed it flat against the cold surface. He moved closer, his palm rising to meet hers, just as before. But this time, she didn't pull away. She let the silence stretch between them, her throat thick with words she couldn't say. "I can't let them take you," she whispered, though the glass carried nothing. But his eyes seemed to answer all the same. The tank room was nearly dark that night. Only the hum of the machines and the faint glow from the water lit the chamber. Outside, thunder rumbled, low and restless. Marina's hands shook as she unlocked her cart. She wasn't here to mop, not tonight. Every step felt stolen, every breath a trespass. Ethan's warning haunted her. The transfer is tomorrow. Her pendant slipped loose again, dangling from its weak clasp. She pressed it against her chest, whispering to herself, "The ocean calls who it claims." She crossed to the tank. He was there, as always, rising from the depths with silent grace. His hair streamed around him, his eyes catching the faint light, burning turquoise. He came close, closer than ever before, until only the glass separated them. Marina pressed her palm against it. He mirrored her, but this time it wasn't enough. Her chest tightened. She glanced at the cameras in the corners, the blinking red eyes. She knew there would be consequences. Still, her hand moved to the top of the tank's panel. She hesitated only once, then slid the hatch just enough for her fingers to breach the surface of the water. Cold, salt, the sting of the ocean where no ocean should be. Before she could lose her nerve, he was there. His hand broke the surface, wrapping gently around hers. Marina gasped, eyes flying wide. His skin was cool but strong, calloused in places where scales shifted to flesh. His grip was firm but careful, as though he feared she might shatter. Their gazes locked. The world outside the tank disappeared. Her lips trembled. "Marina," she whispered, as if telling him her name could anchor the impossible. He studied her, turquoise eyes glowing faintly. His lips parted. At first, only air bubbled, a ripple across the surface. Then, slowly, painfully, "Marina." The sound was rough, broken, but unmistakable. Her name, shaped by his voice. Tears pricked her eyes. She gripped his hand tighter, the cold water lapping over her wrist. She wanted to speak, to tell him everything, but footsteps echoed faintly in the corridor beyond the heavy doors. Panic shot through her. She yanked her hand free, slamming the hatch closed. The cameras blinked overhead, red eyes that had surely seen too much. Heart racing, she shoved her cart toward the door. But before it shut behind her, she heard it again. His voice, muffled through water and glass, carrying her name into the silence. "Marina." The storm returned that night, fiercer than before. Rain hammered the roof, thunder rattled the vents, and the corridors smelled faintly of ozone. Marina's mop bucket rolled noisily behind her, but she barely noticed. Every thought was fixed on the words that had spilled from his lips. Her name, spoken by him. Tomorrow they would take him, cut him apart, erase the voice she had just heard. She couldn't let it happen. When the guard at the desk dozed off over his crossword, she slipped inside the tank room. The air was sharp with salt, the machines humming louder than usual, as if preparing for something. He was already there, waiting. The moment her eyes found his, something in her steadied. She crossed to the tank, no hesitation now, and slid the hatch open again. Cold water lapped her wrist as his hand emerged to take hers, their fingers interlaced. The contact sent shivers up her arm, but she didn't pull back. She leaned closer. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They'll kill you tomorrow. I won't let them." His brow furrowed, confusion shadowing his features. He tilted his head, lips parting. This time the sound came clearer, smoother, as if his tongue had relearned the shape of speech. "Marina." Her throat ached. "What's your name?" Silence stretched. He squeezed her hand gently, then pressed his free palm against his chest. "Kai. Ross." The syllables rolled rough but certain, carrying the weight of the deep. Marina's breath caught. "Kairos," she repeated, letting it linger on her tongue. His eyes softened at the sound. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the floor. Alarms flickered once, then steadied. The storm outside was growing wild, a cloak of chaos waiting for them. She leaned closer, urgency burning her fear away. "Tomorrow, when the storm is strongest, I'll unlock the seals. You must be ready." His grip tightened, turquoise light flaring faintly along his skin. He nodded once, a promise sealed in silence. The hatch clanged shut as she withdrew, water dripping from her fingers. As she pushed her cart toward the door, lightning flashed, bathing the room in blinding white. For a heartbeat, she saw him fully. Strong, regal, his tail coiled with power, a king caged in glass. And Marina knew there was no turning back. Tomorrow she would free him. The storm was at its height. Wind screamed against the concrete walls, rain lashing in sheets. Lightning split the sky again and again, each strike rattling the lights in the halls of the facility. Marina's badge trembled in her sweaty hand as she swiped into the secured wing. Her mop cart rattled behind her, her cover for being here, though her real cargo was hidden beneath rags. A stolen keycard, lifted from Ethan's distracted belt earlier. At the guard station, the man on duty cursed at the storm and fiddled with the radio, static drowning out his muttered complaints. Marina slipped past, her pulse in her throat. Inside the tank room, the air was thick with salt. The water glowed faintly as Kairos rose from the depths, his eyes burning brighter than ever. He knew. She pulled the stolen card free, swiping it through the panel at the base of the tank. Once, twice. The third time, the light flickered green. Metal restraints hissed loose. The low hum of the machinery died. For a moment, silence. Then Kairos moved. His fist slammed into the glass. Once, twice. Cracks spiderwebbed outward. On the third strike, the wall gave way. Water exploded outward, slamming Marina off her feet. She gasped as the torrent swallowed the room, alarms shrieking red. The floor vanished beneath rushing flood. Through the chaos, he surged forward, a blur of dark muscle and scales, magnificent, terrifying. His tail propelled him through the rushing water with effortless strength. In a single sweep he reached her, pulling her up against him, cradling her above the flood. Guards shouted in the halls, radios crackled. "Containment breach! Specimen loose!" Kairos's grip was firm but careful, his chest cold against hers. He kicked once, propelling them both through the corridor as the floodwater poured ahead of them. Where the water was deepest, he was unstoppable, sleek, fast, unstoppable. But when they reached higher ground, his speed faltered. His tail dragged heavy against the slick tile, muscles straining as he half lifted himself, half dragged forward. Marina tightened her grip on him, slipping her shoulder beneath his arm. "Lean on me," she whispered, voice fierce. His turquoise eyes flicked to hers, startled, then softened. He let her bear some of his weight. Together, staggering, half carried by flood and storm, they pushed into the darkened halls. Behind them, boots thundered. Ahead, alarms wailed. But for the first time, they were side by side, free of glass, bound by touch and trust. Water surged into the hall, swirling around their legs, alarms shrieking through the facility. Red lights pulsed like frantic heartbeats, casting the corridors in jagged flashes. Kairos pulled himself forward, his arms powerful but strained, tail dragging heavily over the slick floor. On land he was slower, each movement weighted, and Marina bore his weight against her shoulder, forcing herself not to falter. Behind them, boots thundered. Shouts carried above the storm outside. "There! Don't let them through!" Bullets cracked against the walls. Sparks flared as rounds ricocheted off pipes. Marina ducked, gasping, while Kairos twisted, his broad back shielding her, scales ringing under the impact. He shoved her onward, urgency burning in his eyes. At the end of the corridor loomed a rust-stained hatch, its wheel lock corroded with age. Kairos turned toward it with sudden certainty, a guttural sound rising from his throat. A command, a plea. Marina spun the wheel with all her strength. It groaned, unmoving. Her chest tightened in panic. Kairos surged up beside her, slamming his fist into the metal. Once, twice. The wheel jolted, then spun. With a roar, he wrenched the hatch open. A torrent of seawater burst through, tearing into the hall with the force of a living tide. Marina cried out as the flood swept over her, dragging her into the dark shaft beyond. Kairos's grip clamped around her arm, holding her fast as the current swallowed them. The drainage tunnels were a labyrinth of pipes and iron grates, twisting toward the ocean. In the choking black, Marina flailed, battered against walls, her lungs burning. Kairos surged ahead, his body alive in the water, tail thrashing with raw strength. He wrenched a grate loose, pulling her through. Her chest screamed for air. The pendant snapped loose from her neck, spinning into the current, vanishing in the dark. She reached for it, but her body weakened, vision narrowing. Then strong arms wrapped her close. Through the blur, she saw his eyes, glowing turquoise fire beneath the water. His lips pressed to hers, warmth searing into her chest as his power poured into her lungs. Air, breath, the sea itself carried through his kiss. Marina clutched at him desperately, fingers digging into his shoulder. Her body convulsed once, then steadied as life returned. The storm raged above, but here in the rushing dark, their kiss was more than survival. It was a vow. The storm had broken by the time they emerged. Kairos pulled Marina through the mouth of the drainage tunnel, out into the open sea. The world above was silver and gray, the first light of dawn bleeding across a sky still heavy with cloud. Waves heaved against jagged rocks, spray flying in the air like shards of glass. Marina gasped as they surfaced, clinging to him. Her lungs ached, her body trembling from the cold, but she was alive. Alive in his arms. He held her close, one powerful arm around her waist, his other hand brushing damp hair from her face. His eyes, luminous in the half-light, searched hers with fierce urgency. Behind them, the facility clung to the cliffs, its alarms faint but relentless. She could almost see the guards scouring the shorelines, weapons raised, desperate to reclaim what had escaped. Kairos pressed his forehead to hers. His lips parted, shaping words rough with effort. "Stay. With me." Her breath caught. He wasn't asking. He was pleading, offering everything and nothing at once. The sea, his world, a life she couldn't yet imagine. Her pendant was gone, claimed by the tide. The ocean had taken it, just as her mother had always said it would. The ocean calls who it claims, and now it called her. Her mind reeled. The world she knew, the one above the water, was filled with walls and cages. Down here there was terror, yes, but there was also freedom. There was him. Her hand rose, trembling, to cup his cheek. "Take me with you." His eyes softened, glowing with a light that seemed to answer the dawn itself. With a surge of his tail, he lifted her against him, holding her as though she were already his. The sea welcomed them. Waves rose around them in a crown of spray, and as the first beam of sun cut across the horizon, they sank together beneath the water. The last thing Marina saw above the surface was the pale, endless sky. Then it vanished, replaced by a shimmering world of light and shadow. Kairos's arms wrapped around her, his lips finding hers once more, this time not for survival, but for love. And as the depths claimed them both, the pendant lost to the tide, Marina knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. If you like this story, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel grow. Thanks for watching.